Welcome to the Executive Coaching Podcast, where Executive Coach Alicia Cowan will discuss leadership topics and coaching solutions to tackle the most difficult problems that keep you from leading your team to success.
Hi there, leaders. It's Alicia Cowan. And today we are going to talk about finding your leadership style on episode number 6 of the Executive Coaching Podcast. So let's dive right in. On a personal note, to start things off, we just got back last weekend from an awesome weekend celebrating our 21st birthday of one of our daughters. And we're so excited to have an official 21-year-old adult in our family. She really wanted to go to Epcot. Again, we are such a Disney family. So we went over to Orlando and went to Epcot and spent the whole day just doing all the things, riding all the rides, eating all the great things, having lots of fun drinks. Like, it was just super fun. And we enjoyed it. And so that was really fun. And then on the house update, so we are building a home here in Wesley Chapel, and we are anywhere between 6 to 8 months away from being completed. And right now, the current phase that we're in is all the stuff that goes in the walls. So the HVAC, the electrical and plumbing are, in the process of being wrapped up. So that is all moving along quite well, which is really exciting. So can't believe it. Hopefully this is the year that we move into that house. So excited about that as well. Okay, so what I want to talk about with you today is how to identify and set your leadership style and talk about your leadership style to your team. So I want to talk about this topic today because as I'm evolving this podcast, I think I started out, as we kicked things off with some of the foundational things earlier this year about, setting goals for yourself, understanding your mindset, and talked about the model. Last time we talked about imposter syndrome. And really, I'm setting this up in a way that we're talking about leading yourself really well. And then we're going to dive into more of like the leading your team topics. And so the leadership style is really foundational in really knowing really what is your North Star as a leader. So if you've ever been a part of like an interview process, a lot of times what a typical interview question of a candidate to hiring manager is, do you know what your leadership style, or can you define your leadership style to me as a candidate? And basically what they're asking is, what's it like to work for you? What's your brand like as a leader? I've been asked that question many times myself. And I remember the first time getting asked that question and being a little bit caught off guard because I hadn't really said it for myself. I haven't really verbalized it. And not to say that I didn't have a leadership style, but I hadn't really qualified or quantified it and really had, basically what I identified with for myself. And so it paused me in that moment and caused me also to think about it and really start to shape what my identification of a leader and my leadership style was going to be. And again, this isn't something that's static by any means. It's something that evolves over time and also may change, and you may flex different types of leadership styles depending on the situation of your current team and or the situation of your organization and your company. And it may require different things of you at different times. However, I say that to say, super important to self-reflect on what it is and what you want it to be. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So you will start off perhaps maybe either not knowing or maybe wanting to update or change where you're at with your individual leadership style. And then we're going to talk through a little bit about why it's so important, what it doesn't look like, what it does look like, and then how to go about it, how to find and define your leadership style. And then afterwards, maybe you'll have more of an idea of what you want it to be, and or you are going to start thinking about it in a different way that allows you to really start to take shape of what that's going to look like. Okay. Let's start off talking about why it's important to define your leadership style. You can, of course, lead without defining your leadership style. However, I think it can be really beneficial to serve as your North Star, as I said before. And what I mean by that is it's important to know how you're showing up as a leader and really ask yourself the question, am I just showing up and kind of running on default mode of what I have come to learn and build in terms of my leadership style, or am I consciously deciding? Am I deciding how I want to show up as a leader? And am I really striving to have an aspirational leadership style that is identified as my brand, as what I want to be putting out there into the world intentionally? And again, neither one is necessarily right or wrong. However, you get to ask yourself the question and decide, what do I want? And what do I want to decide every day? It kind of takes stock. And how you can do this initially is to potentially ask yourself and others, what do you identify as my leadership style? And again, that can look a lot different. We'll talk a little about what it can look like and not look like, but that can look a little bit different, again, depending on who you're speaking with or the situation. But there probably are some cornerstones of your leadership style that are potentially habits or the way that you're known to interact and support your team or lead in different ways and in different times. So you get to kind of decide. And when you hear back some of the things, the answers that you get, again, whether you're just asking yourself the question and observing, or asking others that work with and around you, it'll be really interesting to see, is that something that you just have consciously decided to do intentionally? Or was it something perhaps that you learned or picked up on or had seen other people do and just took that and adopted it as your own type of style? Okay, so it's really just understanding what your leadership style currently is and deciding if that, again, is something you want to keep or not. And again, why that's so important is because, again, as your North Star, what you can start to do as you make decisions in the future, or you go into a situation where you're not really sure what to do and how to handle it, if you have your leadership style and you have your values or vision or your own kind of set of internal compass items that you have, then you can run them up against those visions, those values, those mantras, if you will. If you have those type of leadership style quotes that you have for yourself, you get to decide, are these decisions that I'm about to make or this action that I'm about to take in line with my leadership style? Is this something that would be in line with my brand, or is it completely off brand for me? And again, doesn't mean you can't make the decision even if it's not, or if that's how you want to lead. But it serves as that, again, compass, that North Star to again, know that you consciously decide that's how you want to show up. And then you get to run everything, again, up against that in the future and decide if that is in line with your style. And so really what that does is it just gets you out of default mode. And that's why it's important. It gets you out of just running through your leadership style day in and day out that's been basically picked up over time, and gets you out of that just, this is how I run, rather than deciding ahead of time, and just gets you out of doing what you've always done and really just consciously deciding it. And again, super helpful just to have some self-reflection and awareness. So that's the why. And that's why it's so important to help define it. Let's talk about what it looks like. I like to start off of what things don't look like. So let's talk about what leadership style is not. Okay. So a leadership style, a lot of times when I'm coaching leaders, I'll ask, what does it look like for you? What does your leadership style look like? And at times, again, sometimes leaders struggle in the beginning to articulate it. And then at times, then they start to identify as well with the company mission, vision, and values. And while that's not a bad thing, if you rely on just what the company values are and behaviors or the vision, it's not necessarily defining your style and what you do as a leader within that organization. Okay. So it's not just leaning on, whatever the company value is and saying, that's how I lead. Now, let me give a caveat there. it's not a bad thing to have your values or the way that you lead align with the organization. Okay, so this is not, please don't misread this in saying that it's a bad thing. In fact, I would say if the way that you lead is incongruent with the vision and the values and the way of operating within an organization, I'd say that's another thing to look at, because if those two things are out of line, then it's potentially problematic. But again, that's for another day and another topic. So, but again, I don't think that, again, necessarily defines who you are as a leader. While again, alignment is a great thing, just espousing whatever the company mission, vision, values as your own leadership style is not necessarily defining who you are as a leader. Okay, so that's what it does not look like. It also doesn't look like pulling from what other people tell you and how to lead, and defining that as a conglomeration of all the things that have been told to you as what is important and how to lead over the years. So let me give you an example of that. So I had a leader that I was coaching that had a mentor that was really influential in a lot of ways, and was telling this leader to lead in a certain type of way. And it was more aggressive than he was comfortable with. A lot of the phrases of, you need to drop a grenade in order to get results sometimes, and you need to be fed red meat, and it really take hold of driving results through this really aggressive type of style and attitude. And so those were some of his mantras and catchphrases about driving results. And it felt completely out of alignment for this leader. And it was not something that he wanted to incorporate into his own leadership style, because it wasn't how he wanted to get results. So as a result of we were coaching together, we talked about ways to still get results that didn't feel out of alignment with his own leadership style. And we helped really kind of work through what that looked like, and a way to be assertive. Essentially, if he wasn't getting the results that he needed, he could be still assertive in his ask or assertive in his influence, but it didn't feel out of line with who he wanted to be as a leader. So it was a really great way to use, again, what he'd taken from the mentor, but really shaped as his own in a different way, right? So he understood the end goal there was inherently good, of trying to get a result. However, the tactics of how to get there, he made and shaped into his own. So what I say is, with leadership style, it's not necessarily just taking something from someone else, even if it is a leader, a mentor of your own, or supervisor, and making it mean that is how you need to lead. Okay, let's talk about what it can look like. So some examples of leadership style in practice. So a really great way to start to define your leadership style is to look at words and values that you identify with. I will put in the show notes, there's this great resource that Brene Brown shares with her Dare to Lead content that she has on our website. Again, I will link it all for you. But she has this great list of values. And it's just the words on a paper, but it's just a ton of words that you get to potentially look at and circle and identify and say, yes, that really syncs with how I want to lead and how I want my values to show up in the workplace. And so that is a great way to get started. And potentially one of your values could be integrity. That's one I have for myself, and how I run my business is to be really in line with a sense of and a value of integrity. And what then you can do is, once you have that value, or that, again, that kind of phrase or whatever it may be that you identify with, then you can start to then translate and understand then, what is integrity look like? What does integrity look like within my business? And then decide, as a leader, how do I want to show up with the value of integrity, and give examples of that. And of course, you can't think of all the situations, but it could be an example of, I will treat everyone fairly and equitably. I will not be dishonest in my dealings with my team or with our customers. And so that can start to then shape what really is your leadership style. So an example of this showing up for one of my clients is a leader that really aimed to be inspiring to her team. And one really cool thing that she does is when you become a leader of people on her team, you get a book that she finds really inspiring to her own leadership and how she leads as a leader on her team. And so she uses that as a way to show up for her team and to exhibit that leadership style of being inspiring to her team. Another great example is someone identified as a leader that wanted to be a person that always gives credit where credit is due. And so putting into place a couple different practices, he always makes sure that there's certain places where he is giving credit to his team and ensuring that they're getting the proper recognition. So, whether it be at the beginning of meetings to acknowledge or end of meetings to acknowledge the work that's being done by the individuals and really, again, highlighting it and then giving some gratitude to those leaders, or whether it's the all hands or team meetings, larger team meetings, where there's significant moments in time where, again, that credit is given out and teams can talk about the projects or the milestones and accomplishments that they've had. That really, again, aligned with his value and leadership style of wanting to be able to give credit where credit is due. Another client I know liked to ensure that there was always a fun component. Business can be very, again, serious and intense, and work can get sometimes a little bit more intense or not necessarily so fun. So one leader I know always made a point to inject fun wherever it was appropriate. And so that could be something as simple as fun icebreakers into the meetings, or getting together as a team and having just non-business type of interactions. So whatever that looks like, again, it's knowing, again, what your style is, having that as a North Star, and then thinking about how do I infuse that once you figure out what that can look like and how it's going to be showing up for you in the workplace. And a couple of notes on that. We talked a little bit about what it does not look like, what it can look like in some examples, but I think also note that I think it's really important to understand leadership style can be tailored to the situation. And I think I mentioned this at the start, but I think there's certain situations where your leadership style, while it still can be true to you, for example, being authentic, fun, or inspiring, there are times where you need to exercise different types of leadership within different situations. So know that it's not a one size fits all for all situations. And secondly, it also has to feel super, super authentic to you. So again, I mentioned a couple of examples of a leader that had a mentor where it really felt inauthentic to his style. I think that's what's important, is it has to feel real, right? It has to feel authentic, because if not, it will show up as inauthentic, whether or not you intend to or try to, again, fake it till you make it sort of thing. It really has to be something that feels genuine and real to how you want to show up. So it may feel a little bit uncomfortable in the beginning if you try out different leadership styles. However, it shouldn't feel completely inauthentic. And sometimes it's kind of conflicting when you think about those two different things. So trying to experiment and try on new leadership styles or different ways of being and how you want to show up, different than feeling completely inauthentic with who you are as a human and a leader. Okay. So important to kind of distinguish the two. So how do we do that? Let's get into the last piece of this podcast, where I really want to share with you how to find and define your own leadership style for yourself. To start off by finding your own style, you want to set a goal for yourself. Have a vision of like what your leadership style will look like and where you want to go. Okay. And so this might feel super uncomfortable at first, because a lot of times we're looking already at what got us here and what made us successful. And so no, you might need to leave behind some things that have gotten you to the place where you are, that have gotten you to a certain level of success. And again, we will not vilify any of those things or the actions you took, by no means, but it may be something that you need to leave behind. And that's okay. As you ascend to different levels of leadership and you ascend to different roles, it's okay to use and flex, again, different leadership styles at different levels of your career. So know that as you start to create your vision for your leadership style in the future, you may face some things where you're like, I don't necessarily want to carry that as a part of my leadership style anymore. Okay. So don't be afraid to be adaptable. And as you grow, it may feel uncomfortable to leave some of those kind of pillars of your prior leadership style behind. Know that that's okay. And again, know that it's going to be an ever flowing, ever growing, ever changing process. This is not something we're going to set in stone. Okay. So we're very much writing this in pencil. Okay. So define your goal, define your vision of what you want your leadership style to be. That's step one. All right. Step two, start to experiment. We are going to test and we're going to see what response we get. So again, I gave you some examples of different leadership styles leaders have used, and you get to try. So if one of your values, again, is maybe inspiring, like I used it in the prior example, perhaps you try some different things that you feel will be inspiring to your team. And again, it may not land the first time, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that something's gone wrong or that this is not going to work. If that's your goal, you get to test and experiment, and then leads us to our last step: seek feedback and adjust. Okay. So step two, we'll experiment with some things. And then in the last step, we will get feedback and input. So it's okay. Again, remember I said you want this to feel super authentic to you. And again, while it may feel uncomfortable in the process, don't conflate that with being inauthentic. Okay. As you're trying new things and you're moving through the discomfort of it, and you start to see, how does this feel? What's my team's response? Asking for feedback, making adjustments. You get to decide and kind of cement those things in based on where you're at. And again, this is fluid. So as you're going through this, you can, again, take note, reflect what's going well, what's not, what feels incongruent with me, what do I love, what feels really great and exciting, what is my team responding to? And again, we're all humans managing humans. So this may change over time. And it may change for you depending on the situation. So just using that time to experiment, reflect, is going to be super important. And then ultimately, you can start to have these pillars or these cornerstones of your leadership style that really start to resonate with you and become your brand. This is not something that we do overnight. This is something that we do over the course of our careers as we develop and grow and hone our leadership style and skills. So that's it. So leadership style is so unique to you as an individual. You literally get to create your brand as a leader. No one else can decide for you what that looks like. And this should be fun. So have fun in this process. Again, what we talked about was a little bit about why this could be really helpful. Again, serving as the North Star for you. We talked about what it does and does not look like, and really how to start to shape it and how to start to experiment. So now it's your turn. Go out there and play. Have some fun with this. Again, it's not so serious. Defining your leadership style can be really super fun, and you really get to make it whatever you decide for you. Okay. So leaders, you got this. Everyone is waiting on your amazing leadership style to show up in the workplace. So please, if you need help with it, I'm so happy to talk to you about this. It's super fun. And I have helped so many leaders help define, again, what is the way that they want to lead through different types of situations. And so happy to identify what those pillars, what those North Stars will look like for you and what that can look like. So if you want help, again, please don't hesitate to reach out. I am available on all these platforms, but easily you can book through my website at EliciaCowan.coaching.com. It's ElisiaKeown coaching.com. And we're so excited to talk to you again today. So please, thank you so much for listening. Go out there and lead, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Executive Coaching Podcast with Alicia Cowan. If you're ready to have an executive coach who's ready to help you lead your team to success, then book an introductory call at aliciacowancoaching.com/call.